Good morning, everybody. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. You've had coffee. Good morning. All right, that's a little better. I am so happy to see a room full of Democrats. With any of these events the week before, you're always wondering how many people are actually going to show up. And here you all are, and it is just wonderful to see you. We're going to get right down to it because I know that you probably have other things you want to do when this is over on this beautiful day. So I'm going to invite Sheriff Robertson to come up and lead us in the pledge.
How's everybody doing? A lot of new faces out there. This is a unity breakfast, so let's get united. How about that? Y'all help me with the pledge. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And now we have Chatham's own Beverly Goldston to sing the national anthem.
Good morning. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the Rockies regular, the bones bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Give you a hug. Thank you. I don't know about you, but I had chills. We are so lucky to have her in Chatham County, and we appreciate your making time to be with us. So now, I'm going to take a moment to recognize a lot of people, because we have a lot of people who've done stuff in this room. Starting with our very own state senator, Valerie Foushee. And State Representative Robert Reeves. Superior Court Judge Alan Bador. You are. And we're so happy to see Superior Court Judge Carl Fox with us. And our Clerk of Superior Court, Sam Cooper. Where are you, Sam? There you are. Chatham County Commissioner James, better known as Jim Crawford. And Chatham County Commissioner Mike Dasher. Chatham County Commissioner Diana Hales, and our Chatham County Commissioner Karen Howard. Register of Deeds, Lundy Rigsby. Where are you, Lundy? There you are. And of course, Sheriff Mike Roberson. And our Board of Education member, Jane Allen Wilson. Pittsboro Mayor, Cindy Perry. Oops. And she had to leave, but her sister, Bet Wilson Foley, who is on the Pittsboro Town Board, was with us. And both of them are following in the tradition of the Wilson family women, serving the county. Now, there's some other folks with us who have served Chatham County in the past, and among them we have Senator Bob Atwater, Speaker and Representative Joe Hackney, former County Commissioner Betty Wilson. She brought her girls up right. Pittsboro Mayor Randy Voller, who is also past chair of the State Democratic Party and of our own Chatham Democratic Party. And I don't think I've missed anybody, but if I have, oh, I did. Well, don't think I've missed any elected officials. So now I want to move on to recognizing some folks with the county party. Pam Cash Roper is our second vice chair, and she is out front covering the desk. Oh, no, you're back. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I gotcha. Secretary Erica Lindeman. Did Erica go back out? There you are. I can't keep track of everybody. Our treasurer, Shannon Ramasawi. Sorry. Shannon has brought us into the 21st century. We now have remote access to our computers so that she can keep up with all the donations. It's a good thing. And then we have precinct officers with us today, and in no particular order, they're all wonderful. Becky Laughlin, Pat Brown, stand up, come on. Major Charles Gardner, he may be out front. Jesse Scotton. I don't know if David Freeman, Mary Honeycutt, Lou Farisi, Meyer Lieberman, and Ted Dunn, and Virginia Penley, who is on the SEC and is also first vice chair for the 6th Congressional District. Now, coming up in this November, we have 2 municipal elections, and Cindy Perry is running unopposed. There are candidates for the town board, and remembered Pam Baldwin, who could not be with us, but she needs your vote if you live in Pittsboro. Albert Reddick. Albert, where are you? Stand up. Albert is running for mayor of Siler City, and all of these candidates who are running with an opposition candidate need financial support. So, right? Randy, just wait. Lou Farisi is running for at-large in Siler City, and I know he has donation envelopes with him, so see Lou, because he's shy about asking. He likes to give money, but he doesn't handle asking for it very well. That's per him. And then a very important person for 2018, we have Ryan Watts. Ryan, please stand up. He is declared candidate for our 6th Congressional District, and wouldn't we love to send him to D.C.? thank you all for being with us. If you watch the slideshow and in your program, I want to thank our sponsors. They really put us over the top in raising money for the work we want to do in Chatham to win elections. Tickets give us a little bit of a margin above the cost of doing an event, but the sponsorships put us ahead of the game. So thank you all. And I wanted to mention that we missed adding Albert and Susan Reddick to the program, who were sponsors. And so thank you all, sponsors. And on your table, you have a document that talks about our Phoenix Society. Lots of groups are doing recurring donations. We have a small but faithful group of Phoenix Society donors, and you'll notice they have a little green phoenix on them, so thank them, because they are helping us have a firm base of financial support for the work we do. It helps us plan. And we are starting a campaign for more Phoenix Society members. More about that later. And so you know, anybody who would like to share why they're a Democrat, why they're a Phoenix supporter, why they are concerned about what's going on, TaJ Talks is with us. You can see him right here. They will be doing interviews after the program, brief. So if you're not camera shy, please take a moment and share your feelings. And last but not least, I want to thank all the volunteers who helped make this possible. Barry Bassett, who actually went to Siler City this morning to set up for the Hispanic Festival. We're getting a little crazy. We're doing 2 events in one day. Pam Cash Roper, Sarah Lee, Erica Lindeman, Lisa Lackman, Bonnie McCarthy, Lee McLean, Donna Mergliano, Brett Pantalone, who if you went to the credit union was over there directing you to the right side of the county because Google Maps is messed up. Virginia Penley, Margaret Pennybacker, Shannon Ramaswamy, better? Ramaswamy, I'm sorry. You get it wrong and you keep saying it wrong. Daphne Rhodes, Jan Ross, Julie Stano, and Diane Ursano. Thank you all. We could not do this without you. But now it's time for what you all came here for. I'm going to invite Jim Crawford up to introduce our keynote.
Good morning, Chatham County Democrats. I could tell you exactly why I'm a Democrat these days. It's because Donald Trump is full of shit and his hat don't fit. But we have problems closer to home to solve with the same category of thinker. And nowhere in the state can we find a more stalwart progressive than Mr. Chris Fitzsimon. And it is my deep pleasure to be able to introduce him to you today. Please listen to him. He is the founder and director of NC Policy Watch. He broadcasts news and views on WRAL-FM, is a regular on TV's NC Spin, an op-ed writer, a Twitterer extraordinaire. He graduated from Carolina in 1980. He began his career as a reporter in Eastern Carolina, moved to WRAL and WUNC, became Policy and Communications Officer for Speaker of the House Dan Blue in 1991. He's run the Common Sense Foundation, the campaign to protect America's lands, and he has been at the helm of NC Policy Watch for 13 years. In an era when the fact-free diet of Fox News has been superseded by a lying and incompetent chief executive, Mr. Fitzsimon's focus on policy for the Old North State is manna indeed. Friends, I give you Chris Fitzsimon.
Well, thank you very much. I think I'd rather hear Beverly sing again than me speak. I was just told to give it to you straight, so that's what I'm going to do. I was actually here a few years ago. I think it was 4 years ago. I had the honor of addressing the Chatham County Democrats, and that was sort of the early days of the backlash in our state, as I think about it, and our country, that threatens the progress we have made in the last 50 years. And I was thinking about that, what I said 4 years ago, when I was thinking about the thoughts for this morning, about how all that has happened in the last 4 years, and it struck me that we all missed it. I think we all should have seen it coming, the radical, racist, reactionary wave that we're experiencing today in America, and sadly in many parts of North Carolina. And I was thinking back to a story that I told you 4 years ago that happened at the beginning of the 2013 legislative session. And it's even more relevant today, so I'm going to take you back to those days and then talk about what's happening now. It was January of 2013. It happened to be a warm day, and there was something billed as a nullification Tea Party rally being held behind the legislative building in Raleigh. So I hang out in Raleigh. My job is to follow the legislature, so I thought, I'll go. I thought there'd be, 20 people there with crazy signs, and I would look at them and then go on about my way. But when I arrived there were about 200 people on the lawn behind the legislative building, and the point of their rally, literally, on their literature and in their speeches, was to demand that state lawmakers in North Carolina refuse to obey the Affordable Care Act, to nullify the Affordable Care Act, and to refuse any federal gun laws that came as a result of the Sandy Hook massacre in Connecticut, which had just happened a month before. Think about that. There were 200 people there saying we shouldn't obey the federal government, we should do whatever we want, we're states, we don't have to listen, we don't have health care, we don't have to obey gun laws. That was the point of the gathering. That should sound familiar to a lot of us. It sounded familiar to me after I got home from that disturbing experience. And I started thinking about the term nullification and what it meant, and I remembered I'd heard it sometime in history. And you'll remember it when I recite you these lines from a speech we all know given by Martin Luther King Jr. in Washington 54 years ago. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. Dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. King was talking about Alabama Governor George Wallace, of course, refusing to obey a federal court order to desegregate the schools, and Wallace was citing states' rights and Alabama's sovereignty and nullifying a federal law he didn't like. Pretty shocking that there were 200 people in North Carolina in 2013, in effect there to celebrate George Wallace's demented vision in Raleigh. And they were there, but that was not the most disturbing part. All that was not the most disturbing part. The most disturbing part was about a dozen members of the North Carolina General Assembly came to the podium and spoke at the rally to nullify federal laws and disobey the United States Congress and the United States Supreme Court. Then North Carolina Republican Chairman Robin Hayes took the podium and praised the rally's organizers for, quote, what they were doing in North Carolina. Think about that for a second. That would have made George Wallace proud that another generation of nullifiers had taken his place in the dangerous right wing of America. All that was missing that day in 2013 were those obnoxious red made in Make America Great hats, roughing up protesters and obnoxious chants of lock her up. It was the same thing. Most of us didn't realize the extent of what was happening. The open acceptance by one political party of the resurgence of racist nationalist groups as part of their political strategy. That undercurrent has always been there with us. We're not naive. I grew up in North Carolina. I'm sure many of you did. And I remember in 1990 as a reporter covering the Jesse Helms-Harvey Gantt race, when Jesse Helms ran an ad with a pair of white hands crumbling up a job rejection notice, and the narrator said, you needed that job and you were the most qualified, but they gave it to a minority. But here we are 27 years later with the President of the United States that has trouble condemning white supremacists, the Nazi, and the Klan. There cannot be, if the Nazis and the Klan are on one side, there is not another side. There are not two sides when the Nazis and the Klan. But those folks are part of the coalition that elected Donald Trump and part of the coalition that Robin Hayes was talking to in 2013 behind the legislative building in Raleigh. That's where we are in America, and that's where we've been in North Carolina in many ways since 2011. That does not mean that most Republican voters are racist or Klan members. It doesn't mean that most Republican politicians are racist or Klan members, but it does mean that Republicans are more than willing to use those abhorrent views and the people who hold them and refuse to deny them to push their radical ideology in Raleigh and Washington. That's what it means. And it means that they are dismantling the progress we've made in North Carolina in the last generation, thanks to people like Senator Atwater and Joe Hackney. Last week, if you think I'm exaggerating all this and making it up, I have one more story for you, and then I'm going to get to what's happening in Raleigh these days. Last week, a website called Carolina Plot Hound, which I hope you haven't seen, is patterned after the Drudge Report in Raleigh. It had a big headline blaring across the front of the headline of the website, at the top of the page, and it said, quote, Josh Stein's latest ethno lawsuit. And it linked you to a piece from something called the Triad Conservative that claimed Josh Stein was joining the lawsuit to protect DACA recipients or dreamers because he is Jewish and therefore wants the Christian majority with roots in Western countries to be numerically diluted. So you might be wondering, why in the world are you bringing this up, Chris Fitzsimon, in Chatham County? This is we don't have to pay attention to every crazy right-wing blog in North Carolina. Nobody cares. Nobody reads it. Well, here's why you might care. The blog is owned and operated by the Pope Civitas Institute, whose funding comes from the Pope Foundation and the Bradley Foundation, which is chaired by Art Pope. The Pope Foundation is now run by John Hood, who has been getting a lot of attention and publicity going around North Carolina calling for civility in politics, an end to name-calling and vitriol. And let's talk about the issues. That's what Pope and Hood are doing in public when they're sending checks to a group, to an anti-Semitic group against the elected Attorney General of North Carolina. Folks, we are living through a backlash that threatens our politics, and one political party is embracing it, stoking it, and when confronted with it, are refusing to condemn it. It's worth noting that maybe the most shocking decision, I think, made by the General Assembly this year was the last-minute provision added to the state budget that cut $10 million from the Attorney General's budget and limited where he could make the cuts. Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger said he made the cuts because he didn't like the way Stein was doing his job. The cuts are forcing Josh Stein to lay off more than 100 lawyers, most of whom handle criminal appeals, consumer protections, and defend the state from lawsuits. I spend a lot of time documenting all this nonsense and talking about what our General Assembly is doing to us and what can we do about it, and I'm going to talk about that today. If you listen to the spin machines on the right, you'd think that everything was rosy because of the Republican General Assembly, with jobs, poverty, the economy, especially education, because they know that supporting public schools polls well. They're trying to convince us all that the folks currently running things in Raleigh in the General Assembly have increased investments in public schools. They've given huge raises to teachers. They've increased opportunity for low-income folks. No, no, and hell no. North Carolina spends less per student now on public schools than we did in 2008 when you adjust for inflation. We've reduced education spending more than any other state in the country, but 5 states over the last 7 years. Teacher pay is 41st, up from 47th, but still far below the national average that salaries reached in the year 2000 after several years of significant raises from a Democratic legislature and Governor Jim Hunt. Not surprisingly, the lagging pay and the other attacks on the teaching profession, ending supplements for advanced degrees, dismantling professional development, abolishing career status, eliminating the Teaching Fellows Program, and finally replacing it with a meager imitation of what it was. All this, we have a 5-year high turnover in teacher education programs in our universities, a dramatic decline in enrollment. But it's not just teachers who are underpaid. Until this year, principals in North Carolina were paid 50th in the country. Nobody paid principals less. This year, they finally gave principals a raise, but as you might have seen in the News and Observer this morning, some principals are actually going to get a pay cut because of the way the raise was structured. In many districts, public schools are resegregating. The racial gaps are glaring in academic achievement. African American students are 4.3 times as likely to be suspended as white students. And then there's a school grading system. 97% of our schools that receive a grade of D or F on our ridiculous grading system have more than half of their kids who are eligible for free and reduced lunch. That's not surprising because the entire formula is based on one test score, 80% of it is, and only 20% on growth. That means no matter how well poor schools do, how much they improve, they're going to get a D or an F on the grading program. By the way, there's no grading of the voucher schools in North Carolina that receive taxpayers' money. Many of those schools, which is something I wish we could get the word out more about, many of those schools, if a kid is gay in high school or has gay parents, they're forbidden from attending schools that their tax dollars support in North Carolina. Funding for early childhood programs like Smart Start and NC Pre-K is well below pre-recession levels. Tens of thousands of kids every year are on the waiting list. This year, the General Assembly moved to try to eliminate the waiting list, but they did it with federal block grant money that President Trump has vowed to eliminate. It's not just education, obviously, it's voting rights, where a federal appeals court in Richmond said legislators targeted minority voters with, quote, surgical precision with their law that ended same-day registration, required a photo ID, shortened early voting periods. The courts, thank goodness, threw that law out, but another voter suppression law is coming from the folks in Raleigh. And then there's those crazy legislative districts that even a Republican Supreme Court or a conservative Supreme Court says are illegal. And now lawmakers have redrawn another set of obscenely gerrymandered maps. There's plenty more, I'm not going to list them all, but women's reproductive rights, rollback of even basic environmental protections, staffing that threatens the safety of our water and air. Just ask the people in southeastern North Carolina who are now petrified about the safety of their drinking water after discovery of a new toxic chemical called Gen X that was dumped into the river by a local company. And maybe most importantly of all, for all of us, for our daily lives, the tax breaks for corporations and the wealthy. These numbers, I actually sometimes say them and people don't believe them. Since 2013, the General Assembly has cut taxes in North Carolina by $3.5 billion, billion with a B. The top 1% of North Carolinians, the top 1% and with average incomes of $1 million, I know that's all of us in the room, those folks have received a $22,000 a year tax break from this General Assembly that has been in power since 2013. The average income, remember, is $1 million. The average tax cut for the lowest 20% of taxpayers comes to $16. Most of the rest of us, somewhere in the middle, have gotten a couple of $100s a year, and millionaires have gotten $22,000, and they claim that's why they can't adequately fund public schools. But I didn't come here just to list all the reactionary policies being passed in Raleigh by the Republican supermajorities. There's not time for one thing. We'd all be here all afternoon. But I do want to mention two other things before I get through with what's happening in Raleigh. One is the all-out assault and power grabbing by the folks who are in charge. First they had their policy agenda, now they have their power grabbing agenda, from plans to create new judicial and prosecutorial districts with the express purpose of electing more Republicans, to taking appointment powers away from Governor Cooper in everything from courts to university boards to who oversees our elections. And of course, this year's budget also included another last-minute provision that cut $1 million from the governor's office because they said his budget was too big, while giving Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest a new position and an executive protection detail for himself and his family. Then the other thing is the assault on the University of North Carolina, which is dear to my heart, and I'm sure many of you as well. 2.5 years ago, the Board of Governors voted to fire widely respected UNC President Tom Ross. That's when it all started. That was a move by the hand-picked board of the Republican legislative majorities. It came with no public notice. There's no reason given for forcing Ross to resign. The board chair said after the meeting Ross had been doing a wonderful job. But everybody in Raleigh knew the reason. It was the beginning of the Republican assault on the university system, with most of the focus on the UNC campus just up the road, long derided by the forces on the right as a key center of progressive thought in our state. The board recently voted to forbid the UNC Center for Civil Rights from going to court to protect people's rights, which is a core mission of the center founded 15 years ago by the legendary civil rights lawyer Julius Chambers, a UNC law school graduate. The crusade to stop the privately funded center from protecting the fundamental rights of low-income people was spearheaded by a board member named Stephen Long, a former member of the board of the Civitas Institute, who I had mentioned earlier. Long is a typical member of the board these days, elected by the Republican General Assembly. He co-founded a group that has been instrumental in convincing the General Assembly to create school vouchers in the first place, to funnel our money to completely unaccountable private and religious academies. The head of the pro-voucher lobbying group in North Carolina is also on the Board of Governors, as is Tom Fetzer, remember him? Former Raleigh mayor and North Carolina Republican Party chair who's now a well-paid lobbyist in Raleigh. He's now challenging Margaret Spellings, the former U.S. Secretary of Education under George W. Bush. Apparently Spellings is not conservative or doctrinaire enough for Tom Fetzer and the legislative leadership who picked this board to do their dirty work. It's exhausting, I know, it's exhausting to keep up with all this. And that's what they're counting on. They're counting on us being exhausted and not keeping up with it. And I've barely touched the surface. They want us to be divided and fighting with each other to allow this anti-progress agenda to continue to remake the state we all love. That's my fundamental message to you today. Isn't a list of things that they've done or even what's happening in the legislature when they come back for one of their many special sessions. It's not about the litany of damaging decisions, even about the hope we have for Governor Cooper and Attorney General Stein, even about the work done by passionate progressive folks like Senator Foushee and Representative Reeves. Folks, we're at a crossroads in America and North Carolina. It sounds like a cliche. It is a cliche, but it's true. The backlash against progress is swirling heavier than ever and it threatens many of the things we all hold dear and take for granted. We can't take them for granted anymore. This is a unity breakfast. Somebody mentioned that already, and that's my message in the face of these disturbing policy decisions and this era in which one political party is openly aligning itself with the radical and often racist and nationalist right. This is not a time for arguing among ourselves and progressives or even moderates. I don't really care about the 2016 Democratic presidential primary at the moment. This is too important, too much is at stake. I actually don't even care about last year's general election at the moment. I don't care if you supported Jill Stein. I don't care if you were deluded somehow into voting for Donald Trump because you hadn't gotten a raise in 10 years or your wife can't find a job. I don't care about any of that. We're past that. And we're talking now about literally the soul of America and the soul of North Carolina. We have to come together and figure out how to change things, so we're arguing about how to help kids and low-income families, not whether or not they deserve help, which is a debate they're currently having in Raleigh and in Washington. I keep talking about the backlash because I'm convinced that's how historians will view this period in our state and our country. The question now is how long it will last and how many people will suffer because most of our important institutions are being destroyed or dismantled. I know this is true because I also know, as Dr. King frequently reminded us, the arc of the moral universe is long but bends toward justice. I know it and you know it because we all believe, we have to believe deep in our hearts that the people of North Carolina and the people of the United States don't want what is happening now. King also said the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but by the silence over that by the good people. It's actually, it's hard to think of a more fitting analysis of our times, the silence over that by the good people. I mentioned I grew up in North Carolina, I love North Carolina, I want to stay in North Carolina, but not this North Carolina. This is not where I want to live and retire. But that's our challenge. It's not about the details of internal policies at the moment, about who's more progressive on this issue or that one. It's about taking the state and country back so we can have those arguments, so we can debate policy and fight with each other like hell, but we're not going to do that until we take North Carolina and the United States back. It's about halting the backlash before more people are hurt, before more families suffer, before more of our communities crumble. Moral Mondays in North Carolina have gotten national attention. They've been incredibly helpful, but they're not enough. They've galvanized tens of thousands of people. That's not enough. Led us to the editor. Places like Policy Watch and the Budget and Tax Center are doing things. We're not enough. Meetings like this one are good. Your political party is incredibly important, but it's not enough. This whole dispute, this debate, this whole thing, as I said 4 years ago, and I didn't say it emphatically enough, is really just about the truth. It's about telling the truth, not counting on folks to get it, hoping they'll get it, but making sure they get it, making sure they understand what's at stake. The last time I was here, I asked you to do something. I want to ask you again to help me stand up for all these things that we've been talking about. Right here, right now, we need to stand up for voting rights, for health care, for women's rights, for public schools, for well-paying jobs. Stand up for the dreamers who are threatened. Stand up for folks who need health care. Stand up for the state we want North Carolina to be. Stand up if you can. Stand up against hate. Stand up against racism. Stand up against anti-Semitism wherever it raises its ugly head. I want to leave you with something I left you with last time from Woody Guthrie, of all people, from a song you know. This is from the verses of This Land Is Your Land. They don't teach us these verses in school. In the shadow of the steeple, I saw my people. By the relief office, I seen my people. As they stood there hungry, I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me? Nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking that freedom highway. Nobody living can ever make me turn back. This land was made for you and me. Well, I would argue this county was made for you and me. The state was made for you and me. And no Tea Party, Art Pope-funded legislature is going to make us turn back. Let's get out there on the Freedom Highway, take our state back. Stand up, Chatham County Democrats. Tell the truth. Enough people have suffered and enough damage has been done. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chatham County Dems. The only thing I can say right now is what my pastor would say, my. Thank you so much, Chris. You know, it's hard to follow him for more than one reason, but to have it laid out plainly and perfectly as he's done deserves another hand. As always, I want to say to you how honored I am to serve you in the North Carolina Senate. And I want to say also how grateful I am that Robert and I get the kind of support that we get from you. No, it's not always easy, but it is always worth it. And so every day that we get a chance, we go to Raleigh to represent your values and to represent your issues. We will continue to do that. We will continue to fight. I think all of you know where we are right now as it relates to redistricting. So the courts, where the court has the maps, they can do one of four things. They can accept them as they are. They can return them to the General Assembly for another try, God forbid. They could accept the maps that the plaintiffs have offered, or they may appoint a special master to redraw the maps. That's what I hope they'll do, because we all know that those maps are just as unfair as the ones under which we're currently operating. So my charge to each of you is to do this. Call your neighbors. Call your family members in other districts. Talk to your colleagues. Talk to your coworkers. Remind them that each of us has the duty to preserve our democracy, not just for us, but for generations of North Carolinians to come. That is the only way that we're going to be able to save this state that we all love. So I'm not going to stand here and talk to you for a long time, but I will tell you this. If your precinct is not organized, work to organize your precinct. If you get the opportunity to support a candidate financially, support that candidate. Remember that it is not going to get done unless we do it, and we have to make sure that we roll up our sleeves, tune up our telephone voices, brace our door-knocking knuckles, and get ready, because we have work to do forward together, not one step back.
Good morning, Chatham County. Good Lord, all I want to do is say bye right now. It is amazing. I swear, it feels like Chris has been sitting in my house for the last 2 weeks, listening to me argue. I wish my wife was here today so she could have heard all of that. Thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for everything you guys have been doing. You don't know how invigorating it is to see you, to see what we have out here, and to know what we've got ahead of us. Thank you for the opportunity to serve you. I'm not going to beat you in the head with the stuff you have just heard, but I'm going to tell you what these two folk have just said, Senator Fashee, Chris Fitzsimons, is what it's all about. Republicans can't win this state without you. They can't do it. We've got the numbers, we've got the people, we've got the structure, we've got everything we need, but we've got to use it. We've got to get out. I want to keep Judge Fox. I want to keep Judge Bedore. But we can't keep them if we keep letting these people tear us apart. We can't fight each other. We can't sit on the sidelines. We cannot pretend this isn't happening. And the question you've got to ask yourself when you leave here today is, when does it reach critical mass? When does it reach the point where I actually feel like I've got to go beyond what I have normally done? Because I'm there. When I watch what we have done over the last couple of years, when I watch what this General Assembly stands for, when I watch the meanness and the cruelty and the evil that I have seen in Raleigh, it is unbelievable. It's easy to beat up on Donald Trump. Lord knows that's easy. But be real clear. Trump's saying that stuff out loud doesn't mean that the guys in Raleigh aren't saying that stuff in silence every single day. One of the best pieces of advice I got when I was really young and first starting out with the Democratic Party was talking to people about what they can do. And what a person I look up to a lot said to me, he said, we need your wealth, work, or your wisdom. What I'm telling you is we need your wealth, work, and your wisdom. We need everything you can give us over the next 12 months, 18 months, because we've got a chance to take this state back. And understand, for the first time, you've got an opportunity that when you take this state back to immediately affect what's going to happen in this country. Give us this General Assembly back in 18, we're giving you your state back in 20, and that's all we can ask. So thank you, bless you. Let's get ready to roll up our sleeves and work. Let's get ready to take care of each other. Let's show we're selling a business right now. We are selling the Democratic Party. We are telling people who have been disenfranchised, people who do not feel like we speak for them, people who feel like everything in this country has left them behind. We're here to sell them. We're the ones. We're going to take care of you. We're going to keep you healthy, working, and happy. We're going to show you that we got the best state to live in. We've got the best county to live in because we've got the best people. But it only happens if you say that. It ain't worth anything for me to talk, Senator Fasheed to talk, or any of our other elected officials. Because of those people, we're just politicians. You are the people they listen to. So when you call, just like Senator Fasheed said, when you call your friends, when you call your families, when you have those uncomfortable conversations, and they're uncomfortable, trust me, when I'm sitting in a black barbershop having to explain to people why Donald Trump may not be the best option for us, we're having some uncomfortable conversations, okay? But the easy thing to do is say, well, I'm never going to change his or her mind, so I'm just going to stand quiet. We can't stand quiet anymore. The hard thing to do is to say, let me explain to you without confrontation, without argument. But as Chris Fitzsimons said, with facts. Let me explain to you why this is wrong and why it can't happen. Because if we let things go like they're going right now, we will not know this country in 5 years. So take care of each other. Be all that we can be for each other. Support our candidates this year for 2017. Support our candidates for 2018. Give us that General Assembly back. We are going to give you your state back. Thank you.
Wow. Last night when I was thinking about what I was going to say today, I realized that I didn't have to worry a whole lot about what I was going to say because I had 3 people on the program who were going to tell you what it's all about, and they have. But I do have a few things. I'm the cleanup batter here. What we're seeing is not new. The conflicts, the positions have existed since the framing of our Constitution when there were people who thought you could have too much democracy. They thought that only men who owned property should decide what happens in our country, that you couldn't trust an average citizen who was just a worker, let alone a woman, an African American, a Native American, to make decisions. So over time, we made progress on that. We abolished slavery. We gave women the right to vote. It hasn't been smooth. We've regressed in the past, but we are facing something now that is taking that regression to a new level, as you have heard. But you have to remember, Martin Luther King said it, change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle, and we are in a decade that is all about struggle. After 2010, we knew it was going to be a hard decade, but we didn't know. Who would have thought we would have seen the bills passed, that you would have Donald Trump in the White House, that you would see a North Carolina doubly blessed because we have the state legislature and Trump. We've been the testing ground for conservative reactionary policies. Where were they brought all their bad ideas to see if they could be implemented? And unfortunately, they've been able to put a lot of them into play. But the good news is that every day in this county, And when I'm working in Raleigh, I meet people who are dedicated to taking back our state and our nation. They have commitment, they have passion, they have energy, they're resilient. Our state party, under the leadership of Wayne Goodwin, is actually doing the work of building the county parties across our state. He has a plan. This is all stuff that happens in the background, but it's the architecture of victory, and it's what's going to move us across the state forward. Not every county is like Chatham County, and Wayne is doing his best with the officers and the staff at the state party, and they are working very hard. And that's something you need to know about, because it's not something that's covered. It's not something that you're going to see. Now in Chatham, we're doing our part. We're strengthening the county party and the precinct organization. We're bringing in more people. We're trying to improve our structure. We want to tell the truth, as Chris said, to more people in our county. We have the capacity to produce information and to get it out, and we can share that with other counties. But we need three things, and Chris set it up for me. Well, we have a strategy. We have a strong strategy. We have volunteers, but we need more, and you can reach out to people you know and bring them in. The other thing is we need resources, and resources equal money. So today, my final ask of you is, besides supporting candidates who are running for office, I want you to think about becoming a member of our Phoenix Society. It's a recurring donation program. There's information on the table. Could you do $5 a month? Could you do 10, 15, 25, 30? That's the range we're talking about. We're not asking you to make a big monthly commitment, but we are asking you to make a monthly commitment, because if we get 300 people to come on board at an average of $25 a month, we will have the money we need to do the work we need this year and next year, if we can reach that goal. So please thank the people who are already Phoenix members and think about becoming a Phoenix, because we need your support. I did say we have seen what's going on before. I have two quotes I want to leave with you from the turmoil of the 60s, and this is encouragement for us all. Robert F. Kennedy said, "Few will have the greatness to bend history itself, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events." That's what we're talking about. If we each do our part, and we bring other people to bring in to do their part, we will change this state. We will take it back. We will take back our country. And in the 30s, people saw a lot of what's going on now. FDR said, "Success is not final, and failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts." Continue with me and with the other Democrats in this room. We have the courage, we have the skills, and we have the will, and that will bring us forward to victory. We're going forward now to take back our state in 2018 and 2020. I thank you for being with us this morning. I think this goes down as a record for a fast breakfast. I invite you to stay and do a recording and enjoy this beautiful day. Thank you for being with us today.